Can we see it?
Switch to monitors. Sevastopol Station.
With Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus just around the corner, it's become clear that the space station called Renaissance will play a huge role in the story, so much so that it will serve as a character in its own right, much like the setting in a period piece. The Alien franchise is pretty famous for featuring some really cool and unique space stations that often become the hub for companies like Weyland-Yutani or Seegson to carry out their nefarious activity. More often than not, these are used as hubs for experimenting with xenomorphs, and a huge majority of these deep space hubs get destroyed. So, in this video, we will explore the top 15 space stations that have appeared in the Alien movie, comic, and game. Let's begin, shall we? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Gateway Station. Interestingly enough, Gateway Station from James Cameron's Aliens was built almost entirely from advanced plastic. Since it was a pretty huge space station, it was a pretty important hub in space, but it was also home to many with extensive residential area where crew and staff lived permanently. They had a fleet of maintenance shuttles buzzing around, which kept the station in top shape. One important figure who called the Gateway Station home for a while was Ellen Ripley. After being in hypersleep for 57 years aboard the shuttle Narcissus, she was brought to Gateway Station. Now, technically, pets weren't allowed on Gateway, but Ripley's cat, Jones, got a special pass. And why not? He stuck by her side even in space, so the Gateway people had to let him come aboard. Ripley's story about encountering the alien was met with skepticism, and they yanked her flight status. Disheartened, Ripley moved to Earth and started a new job as a dockyard power loader operator. Apart from serving as a residential area, Gateway Station was a training ground too. The United States Aerospace Force ran an aerospace school for future officers, and parts of the United States Colonial Marine Corps were also stationed at Gateway. Historically, it was constructed in 2130 and set in geosynchronous orbit over Quito, Ecuador. In 2176, it even suffered a docking accident with the USS Sulaco, which killed 5 crew members and cemented the ship's bad rep. Sevastopol Station. Built by the Ren Systech Development and funded by GeoFund Investor, construction of Sevastopol Station started in 2095, finally wrapped up on August 4, 2105, which was 2 years behind schedule. The idea was to sell the station to a corporate bigwig, but no buyer stepped up, so GeoFund had to run it as a freeport. From the get-go, Sevastopol faced problems. The space race was in chaos, and bad management almost got the station shut down. Seegson bought it in 2124, hoping to turn it into a cosmopolitan hub. For a decade, things looked up, but by 2136, Sevastopol was sinking financially again. Seegson's focus on exoplanet facility couldn't compete with giants like Weyland-Yutani. By late 2137, Seegson threw in the towel, announced Sevastopol's decommission, and put the station up for sale. The workforce was cut to a skeleton, and Seegson started using working Joe androids to fill in the gap. Many of you may know that Sevastopol actually appeared in the video game Alien Isolation, considered to be one of the best games in the franchise. And if you know Sevastopol, you may also know the infamous Xenomorph incident. On November 11, 2137, Captain Henry Marlowe arrived on Sevastopol with his wife, who had been attacked by a facehugger. Dr. Lingard tried to help, but Seegson's chief of ops, Ransom, blackmailed her and convinced Marshal Waits to break quarantine for a shot at the Nostromo's flight recorder. Big mistake. On November 14, a chest burster emerged from Foster, and chaos ensued as the resultant Xeno started capturing humans to be used as incubators for the hive. By November 17th, the situation was so out of control that Weyland-Yutani swooped in, bought the station, and sent new orders to Apollo, the station's AI. Then on December 11th, Amanda Ripley and her crew arrived to get the flight recorder of Nostromo. She worked with Waits to trap the Xenomorph, but it turned out that there was more than one alien on board. As if things couldn't get worse, Marlowe tried to blow up Sevastopol by overloading his ship, the Inesidora's fusion reactor. Ripley stopped the total destruction, but the explosion still knocked out the station's gravity stabilizer, which eventually made it crash into KG-348's atmosphere. You also want to check out our origin video on Amanda Ripley. It's got her complete life story. Wright Aera Fuel Depot. The Wright Aera Fuel Depot became pretty much trauma central in 2138 when a colony hauler loaded with refugees from a war zone docked, only to unleash a xenomorph infestation that spread like wildfire through the station and into nearby ships. 3 lucky vessels managed to escape, but the rest were stuck in the chaos. Weyland-Yutani flagged the depot as a potential hotspot for xenomorph contagion. A month later, while searching for survivors in the now alien-infested depot, Zula and Davis stumbled upon Dr. Hollis, a lone medical officer hiding deep within the station's bow. But they weren't alone for long. Weyland-Yutani dispatched a team of 24 Colonial Marine and a few company suits on a Conestoga class ship. Of course, they were here to get their hands on Xenomorph samples. Zula, Hollis, and Davis, however, thought that the Marines were after them and released the isolated aliens to cover their escape. The Marines tried to capture some Xenos using electroshock bullets from an M56 smart gun, but it went sideways fast, and although they managed to grab an upper drone body, they took heavy casualties in the process. Meanwhile, Zula and Davis uncovered the Marines' true mission and launched a torpedo to blow up the Marines' dropship. In the ensuing chaos, Hollis set the station ablaze by igniting the fuel container and opening the oxygen container. The station became a massive bomb, so to speak. Zula and her crew made a narrow escape aboard the Europa, while the remaining Marines and aliens met a fiery end in the explosion. Katanga, built in 2120 by the Democratic Republic of the Congos, Kinshasa Enterprise d'Etat-Minier. Katanga got caught up in some shady business by 2170. The original owners got busted for selling resources to revolutionaries and had to sell off its space assets to stay afloat. Siegson then got hold of Katanga in 2174, loaded it with working geosynthetics, and refitted it to crack ice before towing it to the mid-rim. Things were looking up until the colony found Xenomorph and had to flee to Katanga. Sure enough, they brought the infestation with them. Soon enough, the U.S. Colonial Marines from the USS Typhoon became a stakeholder in the mess. They were led by Olivia Ship, who defied orders to rescue the survivor. A disgruntled employee blew up their dropships and took over the station's system. Marines and survivors were led into Xenomorph ambushes, and many were killed by the station's machinery. Siegson reported the refinery was destroyed due to irreparable damage, but of course, this was a cover. General Delilah Vaughn from Deep Void handed Katanga over to Weyland-Yutani, who moved it to a secret location. They turned it into a Xenomorph breeding ground and sent specimens to Pala Station on LV-895. Things went south when Pala Station was overrun by Xenomorphs after a containment. Fortunately, Dr. Timothy Honig managed to escape, ended up in Katanga, where he found himself running from a Xenomorph born from his former girlfriend, Monica Enright. He managed to barricade himself in Bashi Tower, from where he sent out a distress signal that caught the attention of the Colonial Marine starship, UAS Endeavour. The Marines were sent in to rescue, brought the refinery back online, and set up a garrison. In the end, the Marines blew up the place to get rid of the Xeno. Renaissance. Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus is about to drop, and if you're a fan of the Alien franchise, you know space stations are practically characters themselves. The space station in Alvarez's new movie is called Renaissance, not Romulus, despite the title suggesting otherwise. Don't worry, Romulus is still key to the story. Renaissance, owned by Weyland-Yutani, is split into two sections, the older Remus and the newer Romulus. This naming has some serious backstory tied to Roman mythology. Remus and Romulus were brothers, raised by a she-wolf, and Romulus eventually killed Remus to build Rome. Alvarez hints this myth influences the movie's plot. Renaissance orbits a gas giant with a ring system, much like the one in Alien Isolation. The station is circular and spins to maintain gravity in a stable orbit. Set in 2142, Renaissance was built before the events of Alien Romulus, and probably even before the original Alien movie, which was set in 2122. From what we've seen in the trailer, the station is going to be a major player in the film. For more detail, you can check out our video where we have explored Renaissance Station. Alphatech Communications Array. Ernst Kleist and his bug took over the array and transformed it into a massive Xenomorph hive. From there, Kleist launched attacks on several Alphatech properties, including a research station, a listing post on Brackenswood, a mining facility on Joliet, and even a toxic waste facility. Alphatech exec Belova was sent on a bogus mission to investigate the radio silence at the comm array, backed by Marines from the USS Melvin. After a series of hunting and being hunted and deadly encounters, the remaining, led by Lieutenant Henry, fought their way to the station's core, where Kleist was holed up. In the final few moments, Henry, in a fit of madness, killed Kleist, but accidentally triggered the station's self-destruct sequence. The explosion wiped out every Marine, Bugman, and Xenomorph. The only thing left floating in space was the disemboweled synthetic listing. Heaven and Hell. Safe to say the story of Heaven and Hell, Weyland-Yutani's dual research facilities on Europa, is one for the ages. Heaven, orbital research station, and Hell, its deep-sea counterpart, were connected by a rickety space elevator. The mission was to study the icy oceans of Jupiter's moon. When an ecological research team stumbled upon some mysterious deep-sea lifeform, Weyland-Yutani sent Dr. Negshin to the neglected and underfunded Hell to check it out. After wrapping up their research, Negshin and his team headed up to Heaven in the creaky old space elevator called the Beagle. Things went sideways when Negshin birthed the chest burst mid-ride, which then slaughtered everyone else in the lift. Now, the Beagle was left stuck between Europa and Heaven. A rescue team eventually made it into the Beagle, only to find Negshin's corpse and the cocoon remains of his team. It wasn't before long that a Xenomorph ambushed them, killed two members, and forced the survivors back into the Bible, their escape pod. The Xenomorph team crawled into the shaft and perched on top of the Bible. Desperate, O'Shea decided their best shot was to drop the Bible at full speed back to Hell, hoping they could survive the impact and seek refuge amid the chaos. Ali remembered hearing that Nexion was the sole survivor of a past disaster and suspected Weyland-Yutani had set them up to fail. The survivors figured that this catastrophe was being used by Weyland-Yutani as an excuse to shut down the now irrelevant facility. The last 3 survivors hatched a plan to lure the Xenomorph into the searing heat of the Precambrian rabbit abyss, Black Smoke. Using a remote-controlled submersible plan worked, not without a price. The Xenomorph damaged the hull, causing the vehicle to flood and drown the crew. KL-7 Toxic Waste Disposal Facility. The KL-7 Toxic Waste Disposal Facility, also known as the Sun, is a waste disposal setup into an astral frontier, which was basically the outer limit of humanity's reach in deep space. Alphatech Hardware and Javelin Kinetic built this space dump yard. Additionally, Fredco and Schiller Biological threw in some cash too. The Sun Gun's main job was to use a giant magnetic cannon to shoot toxic waste canisters into the star called HIP 67090. The whole operation was run from the operations center, while the Tox Bay handled the waste. Things didn't go according to plan. 2 operators could blow the explosive bolts to untether the Tox Bay, purge it from the outside. The railgun had 1 lone operator. If all hell broke, there was an escape pod at the top of the 0G well above the Tox Bay. Things were going relatively smooth on Sungun until the USS Melville docked to unload toxic material. Right before that, an unregistered ship, Lang, had already docked, and it was packed with Xenomorph. All the personnel employed to take care of the loading and unloading were the first ones to take the hit, and ended up getting wiped out, and security tried to hold the line. But the bugmen had also found their way into the disposal facility, so basically the whole place was a mess. The Xenos overran the station and set up a hive in the Tox Bay. When the Melville arrived and got radio silent, company exec Beliveau sent a security force to check it out, but after they lost contact with the team, Beliveau sent in Lieutenant John Henry's Marine. The Marines found a lone survivor named Dinkle in the operations center, but soon after were ambushed by Xenomorph and had to fall back to the 0G well. Henry managed to activate the Tox Bay's emergency hatchpad, blasted both the Xeno bugmen into space. Mendel Station. While the exact details of what went down here on Mendel Station are hazy, pretty clear. Weyland-Yutani was up to their usual shady business with Xeno. You know, the whole, let's make a weapons out of these killing machines shenanigan. Amanda Ripley herself confirmed there was a Xeno drone on board, which meant that it had to have been born on the station. Given Weyland-Yutani's obsession with the creature, it all checks out. In December 2137, all hell was. A Xenomorph drone escaped and went on a bloody rampage. Of course, it slaughtered the crew. Without a queen to call the shots, it didn't bother with capturing people for implantation. This wanted killed. During this nightmare, Amanda Ripley, who had the superpower of channeling her mother's badassery, used the station's engineering vents to dodge the Xeno and guide the crew of the USCSS Halden, which had docked with the station. Ripley managed to escape on the Halden right before Mendel Station went up in flames. Alphatech Research Station number 2378. Alphatech Research Station number 2378, which orbited around the star HD 122303 in the remote Cerberus sector, was set up for some mysterious bioengineering project. Let's be real, it was all about experimenting on Xenomorph. The station's downfall began when the mutant extremist named Ernst Kleist and his bug took over the Alphatech communication array. They then set their sights on Research Station 2378. Of course, they either killed the crew members or took them in to harvest Xenomorph. Now, this was a big deal in the space service, as it meant that space personnel were not really safe, so the company brought in U.S. Colonial Marine Corps Lieutenant Joseph Henry and his team to deal with the situation. Their mission was to download crucial research data, figure out what went down, so that such an event could be stopped from happening in future. But, as it happens in all Xenomorph stories, things quickly spiraled out of control. A bug man in the control room remotely hijacked the Marines' assault craft and allowed the Xenomorphs on board. And all this, why? To retrieve an unconscious bug. However, Sergeant Nyland killed the bug and stopped the power, although she ensured that the assault craft escaped, paid with her life, and also left the Alphatech Research Station 2378 at the mercy of the Xenomorph. Innominata Station. Innominata Station was run by the shady researcher Paul Church, a man who turned the station into ground zero for some seriously twisted experiments on Xenomorph. Church was obsessed with their behavior and brought in animals and human volunteers to test the Xenos' decision-making skills. Marines with extensive Xeno experience, like Tony Crespi, who was secretly investigating Paul's activity on Innominata, were also on board on the pretext of consultation or security. But things were as shady as they come. Unauthorized experiments with human corpses and live, incapacitated subjects were routine. And guess what? Xenomorphs accidentally get loose and killed key crew members. Yeah, right, total setup. In fact, I have explored Paul Church in the comics in which he appeared in a separate video. You may want to check out our Alien playlist for that video and much more. Anyway, Sharon McGinnis and Crespi eventually figured out where Church's secret lab was. Predictably enough, they got attacked by a Xenomorph when they confronted Paul, who was kinda in control of the Xeno. They accused Church of orchestrating the chaos, but he tried to sick his pet Xenomorph, Trixie, on them to shut them up. In the end, the Innominata survived. Good guys like Crespi were either killed or captured on false charges. Novgorod Station. Novgorod Station was a legit station registered with the Interstellar Commerce Commission. A truly magnificent and massive station. It is somewhat of a crowning jewel in Seegson space empire, located in the Alpha Fornacis system, beyond the Dias sector. This outpost is a lifeline for long-distance freighter, survey ship, and local mining. It also acts as a transit hub between Anchor Point Station and the far reach of the American Arm, similar to other Seegson stations. Novgorod is a bustling habitation, transit, and port station. It has a small permanent population of around 140 to 150 people, spread across 10 decks, labeled A to J. The station's heart is a transit tube with 2 elevators, an emergency stairway, and even a restroom. Don't think you can wander freely. Passengers are strictly prohibited from leaving Deck C. Safe to say, Novgorod Station is your classic Seegson setup, designed to keep the frontier moving, but with all the restrictions and controls you'd expect from a corporate-run outpost, the alien universe. LV-4440. LV-4440 was a Seegson Corporation scientific research space station built to be a mobile lab. Naturally, its primary job was to hop from one place of interest to another to collect data for Seegson. It typically had a crew of 12, doing their thing in the vastness of space. In 2137, LV-4440 was in the Dorado constellation near Zeta Doradus. Xenomorphs overran the station. They dragged the entire crew to a storage bay that had been turned into an alien hive, cocooned and used as host. The crew faced a fate that many would consider worse than death. Soon, news broke out that the station had become a contagion breakout. After learning about Davis 1 and Zola Hendrick arrived here all guns blazing. Why? Well, Davis 1 was actually a company android that had broke free from the company program and also developed free will. On the other hand, Zola Hendricks used to serve the Colonial Marine, but she made it her mission to stop the company from getting hands-on a xenomorph specimen. The two of them managed to destroy the hive and put an end to the xenomorph infestation. Here on LV-4440. Anchor Point Station. The first Anchor Point Station was set up in 2138 in the Neroid sector as a science station refueling hub, following the mysterious disappearances of Seegson Station LV-4440 and the Right Aera Way Station. It provided a safe passage to and from the frontier, but in 2179, disaster, a catastrophic reactor meltdown from an unknown cause destroyed the station. After the first station went boom, Colonial Administration and the ICC got the independent core system colonies to build a new one further out on the frontier to support the colonization boom. Established in 2180 and governed by the ICSC, the new Anchor Point Station became a neutral staging ground for deep space expedition, especially after the Hadley's Hope incident ramped up tensions between factions. It's a hotspot for ICC and colonial administration negotiating intercolonial dispute. Much of the material from the far frontier passes through Theta, or Anchor Point Station, before heading to the Outer Veil and core system. ICC exec Van Leeuwen, investigating the Hadley's Hope incident, was frequently seen coming and going. Michael Bishop's ship, the Patton, often docked at Weyland-Yutani's corporate berth. In 2183, both USCSS Montero and USCSS Miranda were last seen departing Anchor. The Montero, initially on a delivery run to Sutter's World, got redirected to a long-lost Weyland-Yutani science ship and was destroyed. The Miranda, carrying a YX-3 refinery module to the Solomon, suffered a xenomorph infestation and vanished without a trace. Erebos is a pretty unique station because it used to mine energy from the heart of a black hole. Yep, that's right. It was the property of the Kellen Mining Company, and it was one of the most hardcore stations out there. This Resurrection-class plasma trawling and platform was cruciform in shape and constructed from repurposed starship and refinery components, which is the space version of eco-friendly, I suppose. Now, with its 10 deck, Erebos is a beast of a station, much like the Novgorod station, which also had 10, equipped with massive trawling arm. Erebos extracts plasma from stars crushed by the Ablassian black hole. The plasma is then processed through energy distillers and converter before being stored in energy cells. These cells are then transported to the frontier by the plasma harvester vessel USCSS Seterina. So yeah, the space stations appearing in the franchise are nothing short of super advanced, but quite often they are remembered beyond their technological value, as they serve as a separate character in the story. Companies like Weyland-Yutani and Seegson do own them, but controlling them, or destroying them for that matter, is a whole other ballgame. I am just glad that we are going to get a good look at one such station in Fede Alvarez's upcoming Alien. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.